Ukraine destroyed. Over 8,000 dead. Land taken. Presidents willing to talk? Maybe. But the real question is, who's winning? We may not have the clearest answer for you. Here's what's been going on. We are your hosts, Lindsey, Addison, and Allison.
In the first few days of the war, Russia didn't have the best supplies, although that doesn't mean they didn't have enough. 15,000 Russian soldiers were killed in the first month of the war. The same amount of soldiers from the Soviet Union died in the span of 10 years in Afghanistan. Putin, the Russian president, thought that Ukraine would surrender within the first few days of the war, so they weren't fully prepared. The comparison to Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers is pretty unfair. Russia has about 800,000 soldiers and is getting 300,000 new ones, while Ukraine has only about 300,000. The U.S. has sent nuclear arms to Ukraine, which was then a threat to Russia. Russia also received weapons from China. China and Russia have an alliance, so even if China doesn't agree with what Russia is doing, they still deliver to them. Russia has nuclear power, which can be very dangerous for Ukraine and the surrounding areas.
As time goes on, Russia decides to take over Ukraine. Ukraine is one of the top 4 countries in the Soviet Union. The other 3 include Belarus, Georgia, and Russia. Georgia and Ukraine wanted to join the West for a long time, and that made them targets for Russia. Russia didn't want to let them go, but Georgia was not as big of a target as Ukraine. In January 2022, satellite images revealed at least 100,000 Russian troops and military equipment, and Russia has declared that they and Ukraine would go to war. For about a year now, Putin has led his troops to war. They started in Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula, then went to Ukraine's cities bordering Russia, and started to make their way towards the middle of Ukraine, in the capital of Ukraine, called Kyiv.
Ukraine has been fighting back for their land as Russia has taken about 51,000 miles of Ukraine, about 17% of all Ukraine. They knew they needed to fight back. As of right now, Ukraine has won back about 1/5 of the land Russia took. Russia now only has about 40,000 miles of Ukrainian land. The West doesn't want Ukraine to fight back for their land. There's nothing they can really do to change their mind. It may look like Russia is winning through this perspective because they're taking so much land, but Ukraine is making a big effort to get it back. Ukraine has also made it so that Russia only has land in the south now. Recently, Russia has many big losses, and they will need some big wins to stay in this war.
Something else that has been a big topic in the war right now is peace talks. Peace talks are hard to imagine because Ukraine's president is refusing to talk directly to Putin. U.S. officials are siding with the Ukraine president because they are saying Putin's talks of peace are absurd. A source called Al Jazeera says on the one-year anniversary of the war on Friday, China's government, which is closely aligned with Moscow, released a document outlining parameters for a settlement and calling for resuming direct dialogue as quickly as possible. This means that they want peace talks to happen, but both countries are having a hard time getting over wanting to fight till victory. So if either side steps out for peace, they lose. Many people who know about the peace talks that may be happening are saying that Putin is getting the better part of the deal.
Many people have theories as to what the end of the war will look like. People think that there won't just be defeat, and there will likely be a truce, or whoever loses won't be able to admit it. Another theory includes that Ukraine may try to play mind games and convince Russia that they won't be able to win. Russia plays a similar role to Iran in the war between Iran and Iraq. Iran was the bigger country compared to Iraq, so that is part of the reason why Russia sort of resembles Iran, because of the size difference of Russia and Ukraine. The war was about fighting for resources and territory, sort of like Ukraine and Russia's war right now. Except for the war is mostly for territory. Iran and Iraq were also country neighbors, just like Russia and Ukraine. Iraq did start the war, and Ukraine didn't start the war, so there are some differences, and nobody really knows how the war will end. Ukraine and Russia have been at war for over a year now.
We hope you learned something important about what is happening in the war right now.
Thank you for listening.